Okay, so welcome to this video, and this one's going to talk about graphing of linear equations and different ways to introduce linear equations to your students. So the first thing that I want to start off with is slope in real life. And so the first thing I want to show you is the New York Times site. So this site is newyorktimes.com, and if you type in just New York Times, what's going on in this graph, it has basically it is activities for students to use in your classrooms. And so there are graphs and charts and maps and all different kinds of things that you can do, different activities. But since we're talking about slope and linear equations, what I would do when I start talking about linear equations in particular is have them read a graph. Now, it doesn't have to be this graph, but get some kind of a graph that has labels on it and so forth so that they can read, so that you can start doing some kind of a comparison and maybe have it so that you're comparing two things. If they are freshmen, a good type of graph might be to look at a motion graph from physical science, because they're probably studying velocity and acceleration, and you can look at the different cars and which one is going faster. But anyway, something in which they have to look at the graphs and, indicate in some way that they know that this line is going down, that it has a negative slope. And then you can also have them do a comparison as, okay, if they're both negative slope, then which one is decreasing the most? And have them do some sort of analysis with the graph before you ever get started. And so if you could find a graph that does have possibly, negative slopes, positive slopes, and zero slopes, that would be even better on that. So that's where I would start, is having, get something out there with them that they can start looking at and they can start analyzing on their own and using vocabulary that they're very comfortable with and familiar with before you start getting too much into it. The next with slope in real life that I really like to do is one of my first assignments when we do start talking about positive, negative, and so forth, is I give them, and this I just looked up, I just really did a quick Google search, slope in real life projects. If you want an actual handwritten project, so forth, you can go on Teacher Pay Teacher. I know they're there, but basically the premises is have them go out, take their camera, on their phone, whatever they have, if they, and again, you might have to adjust if they don't have it, but have them find something with a positive slope, a negative slope, zero slope, and undefined slope if they can on that. Now, on this one, none of these pictures that I pulled up have them. Oh, this one does. So what I usually have them do is then load it into the computer and actually draw on it. Again, if they don't have access, they can definitely draw by hand. But so here they could draw by hand on there and then indicate. But they also have to tell what it is, what kind of slope. So here's some very good examples. So just pull up and look at some of those. Again, we're not getting in the nitty-gritty of actually calculation of slope, but we're just talking about identifying what is positive, negative, zero, and undefined slope. And then, of course, you can talk more when they start looking at this is about the undefined slope and why, it causes so much problem, because if you have an undefined slope, if you're trying to ski, well, that's like a cliff, if it's a roof, well, it's straight down, so forth. So you can kind of get into that undefined slope there a little bit and getting more into these are often awesome things. And again, it makes them say, if you don't want to have them sent at home, then send them to your classroom, have them go around their classroom and take pictures, so forth. Now, the next thing that I also have my kids do and draw on their paper, in their notes, their foldables, and their doodle notes, whatever it happens to be, I do teach them Mr. Slope Guy, because I have found so many who cannot remember. But if they learn how to draw Mr. Slope Guy, then when they, start thinking about it, if they forget, you can always say, hey, remember Mr. Slope Guy. And so if they can at least put a visual representation to the slope, that might help them out. A lot of kids are not going to need it, no, but definitely something. And again, if you want to look up Mr. Slope Guy, there's a lot of those on the internet. Just do a slope guy, and then you can come up with all different types. Okay, so that it would be my introduction. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I am a big fan of Desmos. So I would, when I get to drawing actual lines, before I start giving them too much, I want them to explore. So the first thing that I'm going to do is have them go to Desmos and actually go to the graphing calculator. And I will say Desmos has updated so much all the time, but I would go to the graphing calculator. So an example, what I'm talking about here is, if you remember one of the very first lessons, it gives you the format. You know, in order to be in a linear equation with A, B, and C, you know, you can't have x in the denominator, you can't have x under the square root, all those kind of things. I wouldn't tell them that. What I might give them is a list of equations. And you know, I might give them y equals 2x. I might give them y equals x squared. And different things, you know, y equals x plus 3, you know, 2x plus y equals 5. I might give them, you know, just a bunch of different things. And you wouldn't have to get them all at once. You could give them into different categories if you want to make it a little bit narrower. And say, okay, have them look at that. And then they can see, okay, well, this one is definitely not, the blue is not linear on there. So what is different in what is different in the blue than in the others? And then hopefully they'll start looking at, well, y has a square. Okay, so let's write that down. Okay, so your x cannot be squared. Okay, there's my first thing. You know, and we just keep doing that. Y equals 3 over x. Oh, well, look what happened there. Black. Okay, that is not a line. Okay, x cannot be in the denominator. See, make them come up with that list. Don't do it. Don't just give them the list yourself. Say, hey, here's some different ones. And of course, you're going to balance out your equations so that they hit each of those different concepts that would be listed there, but make them come up with a list themselves. If you want to have them work in groups, you could do that and come up with a list, and then you can compile your list together as a class and say, okay, so these are my rules. Okay, you can put negatives in there and have them look at that. You know, you come up with your list. Okay, same thing. You know, like I said, I love Desmos in terms of exploration. You know, y equals a negative 2x. Okay, so what's the difference in the two? You know, why do you think one went up? Why do you think one went down? Have them explore. You know, we're going to do a plus 2 on there. Well, what did that do with your graph? Okay, so generally what I do, I kind of did these in back order. Let me go back up here. So what I would do is put the 2x, and then I would say 2x minus 1. What did that do to your graph? Okay, so let's try another one. Y equals 2x minus 3. What did that do to your graph? And then again, they come up with a thing that says, okay, that minus 1 moved it down 1, minus 3 moved it down 3, you know, so forth. And then say, okay, well, if that's the case, then what do you think that it would do if it was a plus 4? What would it do? And then see if they're right. And I do have a sheet that will be attached to this, which is a copy of my activity that I do along with them, and having them look and record and analyze. But you don't even have to have really anything written down. You can just pop yours up there as a projector on the screen, and you know, just tell them or just give them the list. Here's some equations. I want you to come up with some justifications and some rules. Okay, very easy. Again, try to get away from, and I know we're also used to doing that, is giving them the rule. Okay, I am a firm believer they're going to learn more if they come up with a rule than if you give them the rule. Okay, that is just my firm belief. And that is why I say I love Desmos, because you can do quick explorations. Yes, I know. I'm going to want them to be able to graph y equals 2x by themselves by hand. Y equals 2x minus 1 by hand. So forth. They're going to have to be able to identify the slope and the y-intercept. I 100% agree with all of that. That's it. We're talking about introducing the topic to them. Let them explore. Let them see the patterns. Then when you start practicing it, then it becomes easier because they've already seen it. So when you say, okay, 2x minus 1, what did that do? Okay, what did we say the minus 1 was? Okay, so that's our y-intercept. Let's put that on the graph. Okay, here's my slope. It's 2. Let's put that on the graph, so forth. And then you can, so it's kind of somewhat going backwards, but that's okay. The other thing that I would strongly suggest you do, we are all swamped with grading, every one of us. But at the same time, we want them to be able to graph. I think they still need to be able to graph by hand. They need to know how to graph, not do everything on Desmos. So as I say, I'm a firm believer in Desmos. I am also a firm believer in kids being able to do things by hand. So when they do have a worksheet in which you're wanting them to graph by hand, there is nothing wrong with say, okay, I want you to do, 4, 6, 10, whatever you have them do, graphs. Here it is. I want you to graph it by hand. When you're done, let me look at it. You put a little check mark up in the corner. Okay, I've seen it. I know you got it done. Now what I want you to do is I want you to open up your Desmos. I want you to put those equations in, and I want you to see if you're right. Okay? If you're not right, that's okay, because we're practicing. I want you to tell me what you did wrong and maybe fix it in a different color. Use colored pencils. So that's me. That's how I teach. I am very much into, me personally not grading, but having the kids grade their own stuff. They find their errors. They do an analysis. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? Remind them at all times when you're doing this, you're practicing. So it's okay to mess up. We want to figure out why you messed up and what we need to do to correct that. So this is just a brief introduction to graphing of linear equations. Okay, so I have showed you just kind of how I would introduce. There are now, if you will look on the spreadsheet that I've posted for you, there are tons of examples of linear type things to do on Desmos or on other sites. Here's Robert Kaplinski. I love his activities. Mathlicious changed. I didn't realize that. Mathlicious is no longer Mathlicious, but it is called, here it is here, and I know that does cost Citizen Math, but maybe your school has it. Lots of activities to get into that deeper exploration. Guys, I do the same thing. I didn't make a copy of this, but here's some card sorts. I love those, where you have the equation, you have a data table, and maybe you have a graph. Guys, you can make those in Desmos very easy and print out the graphs. It's super easy to just print your graphs and then your tables and things and have them match them up when you're going into looking at your t-tables and your equations and your graphs. That card sort is easy to do. Again, you can always buy them on site. Here's one on there, one here for you. Okay, another thing, let's just go to Desmos again. Like I said, I love it, but there's also tons of other things. There's quick activities that you can do. So I'm going to just do card sort. If you go through card sort here, there are all kinds. You can do functions, modeling. I'm going to just click on linear functions on that and student preview for you and just show you again what this looks like the other. So this is very similar to what we had earlier. Here's your equation. Then they can find the card that goes to it. You wouldn't match two equations together. So they got to find the card. Those are popped together. So you can pull them apart. And so let's see. See if we can find the one that works here. Anyway, here's a minus. That's not a slope of 4, but here's the graph. Again, you can match those up. You can take them apart if you don't like how they're matched up. But anyway, it's just like that card sort I showed you, but it is on Desmos. Do the same thing. You can make these up, guys, honestly, very easy, but there's some that are already made up. Okay, so again, then this goes through, ask you questions. Guys, again, activities instead of just beating the textbook to pieces on there. So that's, again, Desmos.